My homeowners association tried to fine me into bankruptcy over a small garden shed, so I used their own rulebook to dismantle their entire board and cost them thousands of dollars. My world is my half-acre of suburban paradise. It's not much, but it's mine. After years of living in cramped apartments, my wife, Sarah, and I saved every penny to buy this house. My joy is the backyard. It's my sanctuary, the place I practice my woodworking, the place our 2 kids can run free. For me, a quiet life isn't a boring life. It's the ultimate prize. The most important thing in my world is the peace and autonomy of my home, the principle that within my property lines, I am the king of my own small castle. I never imagined my biggest threat wouldn't be a burglar or a natural disaster, but a clipboard-wielding tyrant named Brenda. Brenda was the self-appointed queen of our neighborhood and the president of our homeowners association. She was a woman who seemed to derive her life force from the small-scale misery of others. She would walk her yapping poodle every morning, not for the exercise, but for the surveillance. She carried a clipboard and would make notes, measuring the length of people's grass with a pocket tape measure, and leaving passive-aggressive flyers about bringing in trash cans precisely on schedule. Brenda wasn't just a stickler for the rules. She was a woman who had weaponized beige-colored vinyl siding and used the HOA bylaws as her personal Bible of vengeance. My masterpiece was a 10 by 12-foot garden shed. I'd spent months designing it, and 3 weekends building it with my own hands. The grain of the cedar siding was perfect, the shingles on the roof perfectly aligned. Before I even bought the first 2x4, I had submitted my plans to the HOA Architectural Review Committee, as required. I received a signed, stamped letter of approval. The shed was my pride and joy. A month after it was finished, a certified letter arrived. It was from the HOA. It was a violation notice. The structure located at the rear of your property exceeds the approved height by 4 inches. A fine of $50 per day is being assessed, retroactive to the date of construction. The total fine was already $1,500. I stared at the letter, a low buzzing sound filling my ears. $50 a day. 4 inches? I had built it exactly to the approved specifications. This wasn't a mistake, this was an attack. I felt a surge of pure, indignant rage. This was my property. My approved project. This woman, this suburban dictator, had decided to make me her next project, and she was using the full, bureaucratic weight of the HOA to crush me over the height of a roofline. The injustice of it was so profound, it felt like a physical weight on my chest. That night, I sat at the dining room table with the HOA bylaws, a 3-inch binder of arcane rules, and my approved plans. Sarah sat across from me, her face tight with worry. "Just pay it, David," she whispered. "It's not worth the fight. You know how she is." But I couldn't. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the principle. My first move wasn't aggressive. It was logical and calm. I requested a hearing at the next monthly HOA meeting. I walked in with my binder, my approved plans, and a diagram showing my shed was built to spec. I calmly presented my evidence to the board, a panel of Brenda's hand-picked cronies who nodded along to whatever she said. I pointed to the approval letter. Brenda didn't even look at my documents. She smiled a thin, reptilian smile. The committee's initial approval was provisional, pending final inspection. The final inspection found a violation. The fines stand. That calm, dismissive arrogance was her fatal mistake. It provoked me. I wasn't just an annoyed homeowner anymore. I was a man with a mission. My refusal to simply roll over and pay turned Brenda's casual tyranny into a full-blown obsession. The day after the meeting, she was in my yard with a tape measure and her clipboard, documenting new violations. A small crack in the driveway. The garden hose being improperly coiled. A patch of moss, no bigger than my hand, growing on a paving stone. Every few days, a new certified letter would arrive with a new fine. $25 for the hose. $100 for the driveway crack. The fines were approaching $5,000. She was trying to bury me, to make an example out of me for daring to question her authority. I was drowning in a sea of paper. Each violation notice was written in dense legalese, citing obscure subsections of the bylaws. I spent my nights at the kitchen table, cross-referencing my alleged crimes with the massive, unsearchable binder of rules. The HOA wasn't just an organization. It was a system designed to exhaust and overwhelm you into compliance. The certified letters became a source of genuine dread. It felt like I was being stalked, harassed by a phantom government that had absolute power over my life. I knew I couldn't fight this labyrinthine system alone. My wife, Sarah, quickly went from being worried to being furious. Seeing the relentless stream of letters and my mounting stress, her fear turned to resolve. "Okay," she said one night, slamming her fist on the table. "You were right. This is war. Burn her to the ground." She became my partner, my late-night proofreader, and my moral support. Have a friend from college, Alex, who is a real estate lawyer. I called him, embarrassed, and explained the situation. I expected him to laugh. He didn't. He was silent for a moment, and then he said, "David, this is textbook harassment. HOAs get away with this because it costs more to fight them than to pay. But what you're describing, this is personal. This is a vendetta." He was angry on my behalf. "Don't fight them on your shed," he advised. "That's her battlefield. You need to change the battlefield. Read every single word of those bylaws. Every rule that applies to you also applies to them. Audit them. Audit them all." An older gentleman down the street named Tom, who had lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, saw me checking my mail one day and noticed the certified letter. "Brenda getting to you too?" he asked with a sad smile. He told me how she had forced him to repaint his entire house because the shade of beige he'd used was, in her opinion, too aggressive. He told me that most of the neighborhood hated her but was too scared to fight. He became my first soldier. The lowest point came when a letter arrived from the HOA's law firm. It was a formal notice of intent to place a lien on our house for the unpaid fines, which now totaled over $7,000. My heart sank into my stomach. A lien. They could force a sale. My dream home, my family's security, was genuinely at risk. That night, I seriously considered giving up. I sat with Sarah on the back porch, staring at the shed that had started it all. "Maybe we should just pay it," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Maybe this fight is too big." I felt utterly defeated, like David staring up at a Goliath made of paperwork. Armed with my lawyer's advice and a new fire in my belly, I prepared for the next HOA meeting. This wasn't going to be a defense. It was going to be an attack. The meeting was in the musty community center basement. Brenda and her board sat at a long table at the front, looking smug. I sat in the front row, a thick, newly organized binder on my lap. Brenda began the meeting by publicly shaming me. "As you all know," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "Mr. Miller continues to be in violation of numerous community standards. His fines now total $7,850. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the front. I didn't address my own fines. I opened my binder. "Thank you, Brenda," I began, my voice calm and clear. "I'd like to open our discussion tonight by turning to Section 4, Article B of our bylaws, which details approved fencing materials. It explicitly states that all fences must be made of either cedar, vinyl, or wrought iron." I held up a large, clear photograph of Brenda's house, showing her beautiful and very expensive pine fence. "Brenda," I asked, "is this fence made of cedar, vinyl, or wrought iron?" A murmur went through the crowd. Brenda's face went from smug to pale. "I'd also like to discuss Section 7, Article C," I continued, flipping a page in my binder, "which prohibits any visible alterations to a home's roofline, including satellite dishes that are visible from the street." I held up another photo, this one of the board's treasurer, showing a massive satellite dish bolted to his chimney. For the next 10 minutes, I delivered my nuke evidence. I had spent the last month walking the neighborhood every morning, just like Brenda, but I wasn't looking for minor infractions. I was auditing the board. I had a detailed, documented, and photographically evidenced list of every single violation committed by every single board member. Illegal fences, unapproved landscaping, commercial vehicles parked in driveways overnight, sheds that were too big. I had them all, dead to rights. According to Section 11 of the bylaws, I announced to the stunned room, any board member found to be in violation of the bylaws is subject to the same fines as any other resident. Furthermore, they are required to recuse themselves from all board activity until the violation is remedied. I pulled out a stack of papers. I have taken the liberty of calculating the fines for each board member, retroactive to the date of their violation. For you, Brenda, with your illegal fence and unapproved deck extension, that comes to a total of just over $12,000. Brenda, her face now a blotchy red, slammed her gavel on the table. "This is out of order. This is a personal attack. This meeting is adjourned." But it was too late. The system was no longer on her side. The other homeowners in the room, who had been cowed into silence for years, were now whispering excitedly. My ally Tom stood up. "I don't think it is out of order," he said, his voice surprisingly strong. "I think Mr. Miller has raised some very serious points. According to the bylaws, a motion to remove board members can be brought to a vote by any homeowner." Brenda stared at me, her eyes filled with pure hatred. She had lost control of the room, of her kingdom. The thematic climax wasn't a shouting match between us. It was watching the hands go up, one by one, as Tom made the motion to remove the entire board. It was a landslide. The system that Brenda had used as a weapon of personal vengeance had been turned against her with surgical precision. Her own rulebook was her undoing. The old board was out. An interim board was voted in, with Tom as the new president. Their first act was to unanimously dismiss every fine levied against me. Their second act was to formally issue the fines to Brenda and the other former board members, giving them 30 days to pay or remedy their violations. My lawyer Alex sent a formal cease and desist letter to Brenda on my behalf, warning against any future contact or harassment. The war was over. I had won. Brenda's fall from grace was swift and glorious. Over the next 2 months, we all watched as a construction crew tore down her expensive, illegal fence and replaced it with a standard vinyl one. Her unapproved deck was demolished. She had to pay thousands of dollars. She stopped her morning surveillance walks. She was just another resident now, and a deeply unpopular one at that. It's been 6 months now. The neighborhood is quiet. The new HOA is reasonable and focuses on actual community issues, not petty tyranny. Tom does a great job. My shed stands proudly in my backyard, a monument to a battle hard fought and won. I can coil my garden hose any way I damn well please. My life is not just back to normal, it's better. The toxic element has been removed, and there's a newfound sense of community and empowerment among my neighbors. I have my peace back, and it's a peace I earned.